obviously, things are a bit different now. So just to recap, Digital Foundry is now a fully independent creator-owned entity. We've parted ways with IGN. We've bought them out. And we're looking forward to a brand new era of being fully in control of our own destiny. There's a huge amount of stuff that we're looking into tentatively, which we talked about in a DF Direct special, which I'll link in the video description below. But we've obviously had some supporter questions about all of this. And we won't get through all of them, but these ones I thought were quite interesting. We're going to kick off with this one from Alan, the infamous legendary Alan from the Discord. The workers have overthrown their corpo overlords! Exclamation point. The truth is, though, times are getting tougher. Too many people are trying to do the same thing. Big tech sucking the life out of independence, people wanting content for free, and now AI. What can us viewers do other than Patreon? How many of the viewers are not subscribed? Ideas for merch? It's a good question, really. I mean, ultimately, I think it's down to us to actually talk about the mechanisms of support. And if you look at channels like Gamers Nexus, they actually do that really well. You know, they talk about their new merchandising. They talk about how supporting the team directly is directly connected to content, good content, quality content. And we have to do the same. And, you know, we need to do a better job of telling people, hey, you know, we are fully independent media. We are reliant to a certain extent, to a great extent, on your support. And we do need to talk more about the Patreon. I do think we need to be a bit more innovative in terms of merch in the way that Gamers Nexus has, because they've done some great stuff. Not to mention, you know, the empire of merch that Linus Tech Tips has done. We can't do that, obviously. We haven't got the time. But, you know, we can do better. And, I think it's just basically a case of stay tuned, really, to see what we get up to and how you can support the team. But, patreon.com/Digital Foundry is our primary form of support for now. And the whole process of independence and going forward with that, that's where I'm going to be posting all of our key updates so people can see what we're actually doing and how difficult it is behind the scenes to sort of do certain stuff, but basically take you along on the journey with us. Let's move on to this question from Peter Karadimas. Happy Independence Day, DF crew! Exclamation point. Now you guys are completely in charge of your own destiny. What's your general view of sponsored content with the YouTube channel going forward? You stated in the past you won't be doing content like the Nintendo ad, but what are your thoughts on things like sponsored deep dives and partnership content with publishers? Interesting question, right? And I think there's a good way of doing it, and there's a poor / suboptimal way of doing it. I think basically when the views of a sort of sponsor align with stuff that we're passionate about doing, then you get something really, really decent. And let's talk about your video you just done with NVIDIA there, Alex, on Doom, where it was basically something which I thought was just completely fascinating. It was to go back in time and to visit a pivotal point in PC gaming and to celebrate major advances in graphics. At the same time, kind of like also towards the end of the timeline there, talking about how innovation has changed, evolved, what's new with the current generation, using the Doom franchise as like a touchstone of sorts.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it, because I've always been passionate about how games run at the time period of when they came into being, and then like what they brought to the table that was new visually or otherwise. And I feel like that is an area of sponsored content that I'm very comfortable with, and there are ideas that freely flow out of my brain without prompting. So there's two angles to sponsored content. The way it kind of happens is you get approached and they say, we want to do something and this is the specific thing. And then you're kind of brainstorming about what you want to do with it, because maybe they align with your vision, but you're not sure what you want to do. But for here, NVIDIA was like, we want to talk about Doom. And I was like, okay, this is how I would want to talk about Doom if I ever wanted to talk about it. And that was, it was liberating at the same time as it was a great way to channel my creativity and the things that I was really interested in. And in the end, everyone was happy with it, I think, from all parties' perspectives. And that is a direction I would really like to take sponsored content in the future. It wouldn't necessarily be so large. That was a pretty long video. But, the idea of where I would talk to a publisher who has a series of games or even a new game coming out that aligns with visions of, the latest and greatest in, gaming technology, past, present, and future. If it aligns with that vision of DF and my personal vision, then I would totally do it. And I would approach it to a very similar way to that video. And that could include hardware and software. So that's what I would really like to do. And definitely not a repost of an ad on the main channel.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that wasn't great. But at the same time, the thing that I liked about the Doom video is that I think there's kind of like a constant revisionism of the glorious past of PC gaming. And it's natural that if you're going to be making like tremendous leaps and bounds in visual fidelity, guess what? It's got a performance cost. That is true today, and it was true yesterday. And what you actually showed in that video, which I thought was quite interesting, is that there's actual technologies in place to attempt to mitigate the impact of those performances. But the thing that amused me the most was the fact that the original Doom, had an upscaler. Horizontal upscaler.
Yes, it did. It's so funny. You go back and like everyone just remembers Doom from the iconic images, but if you played it back, and the thing is, I got a lot of feedback after the video from people who love retro computing, and they were very happy that I showed it as is. But a lot of people were saying, Alex, you showed a 486, and that was still super expensive at the time period. I played the game on a 386, and my goodness, that was a small window. So it's even more, I presented the best of the best for the most part, and rose tinted the comparison at that point, because I wasn't showing like maybe the average mainstream. And another thing that I love that you just described, that this kind of, I don't know if it's a romanticization or if it's a changing of the way things actually were, but a lot of people really do think for a certain period of time that the best PC games just ran at like 1080p 60 no matter what. Yeah. And like I'm already seeing it with Battlefield 6 coming out. There's a long scale narratives about how EA DICE games run, and all the things I read out there are wrong. Like almost all of them are wrong. Like you go back, Battlefield 3 was like destroying PCs if you had the settings up, like it could scale so far into the future. Or even go back to Battlefield 2, you couldn't play the game on the highest settings with less than 1 gigabyte of RAM. That was like 3 gigs of RAM back then, or 2 was like $500 to $700 US. Like you gotta really perspectivize some of this stuff. So I would love to do more of that.
Yeah, I think just to sort of sum up the sponsored content side of things, we've got to rebalance the business because, you look at all of the PC tech channels and all of them have some sort of monetization element beyond Google AdSense. It can be just a quick ad, for example, Burnt In, Gamers Nexus do this, Hardware Unbox do this. There's a lot going on there that's just, stuff that we kind of done. We've done a few MSI things in the past, but we've not really done anything beyond that. But what I do think is important is still that, if you are a supporter, you've got access to like ad-free versions of everything we do, which is something which is, I think goes down well. But, we are going to be talking to people about, just revamping the whole commercial side of the business, because ultimately we've laid out our stall in terms of what we want to do. But we got to pay for it, right? And that's going to, basically involve, additional support. Now we're fully independent, which I've got to say, I'm just blown away by the response on Patreon. So thank you so much to that. But, we want to pay people what they're worth, good money. So that's, we've got to basically diversify the business and increase revenues elsewhere in ways that are kind of acceptable, and sponsored content that we love to do. Ad inserts, I don't have a problem with those. But, stuff like, just dropping trailers onto the channel, that obviously didn't work. Learned the lesson and moved on. Quick question here from Matt Birchler. Hello, exclamation point. Absolutely love the work you all do. So happy for you embarking on this new era. I'm curious if there are any benefits to being owned by someone else that you'll miss now you're indie. Things like cross promotion or technical infrastructure that you need to handle yourself. Cheers, exclamation point. Just quickly answer that. Yes, having a company that just handles payroll and taxes and everything for you, that is like incredibly valuable, because the whole point, one of the whole essences of why we did this joint venture with Gamer Network back in the day is they had all of that taken care of, and it was like, we'll take care of this, you take care of the content. And that was in the time where Gamer Network itself was an independent company, and kind of there was great alignment in terms of what we set out to achieve. That kind of changed once the Gamer Network was sold to Reed Exhibitions, this like massive company. At that point, it kind of became the case that there were a lot more disadvantages than advantages, and obviously, the way things are now, we've got rid of that, but we do need to sort all of that stuff. Let's go on to this question, Mr. Bespoke. Hi, DF gents. Now that Digital Foundry is now quote unquote completely independent, will Alex be making an escape attempt from his undisclosed location and his captors? Thanks, and keep up the awesome independent work. This prompted a response from Give Me More Fame Rate. At least they allowed him to hang up some pictures.
Yeah, I was about to say we're upgrading here in the prison cell. But actually, seriously though, the reason why I've been put it this way is because behind the scenes details, I moved essentially where my workstation setup was to a room in my house where currently the bed I sleep in is, because we are moving. It's not a house. I live in an apartment. Who am I kidding? But we're kind of moving the bed to the different room where I previously used to work from. And this room is being converted into a kind of work room and also a place where you can lounge a little bit. And that has been long because, it's kind of hard to find the time to rip out wallpaper and redo an entire room while you work and do all these other things in real life. So, so that's why it's taken some time. And that's why I'm unfortunately focusing on this little tiny area right here between my windows at the front of my house. So it'll change hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
The final question from Joe Esposito here. Hello, newly independent DF team, exclamation point. Now that you're running solo of Outside Control, what do each of you look forward to most as you enter this new chapter? Congratulations, exclamation point. It's interesting, this concept of outside control. I think it's more, it's fairer to say that it was outside influences, because editorially we've always done what we do, right? It's not really any sort of directives from above or anything like that. It's more of the case that let's just say that business strategies for a gigantic multinational, obviously they're in place for a reason. Are they the best strategies for a bunch of 5 people working out of their homes? Possibly not. But Oliver, what do what's the sort of thing that you're looking forward to going forward?
I mean, personally, I've always been very happy with my little slice of Digital Foundry, mostly covering console games and things like that. I don't expect that will change a whole lot here, but I'm hoping that with this move we'll be less under pressure, maybe to keep costs in check, and that we can operate without like really hard cost pressures. In particular, I was kind of, personally concerned about everyone else in the team when like there were, different kinds of cost cutting measures, different kinds of redundancies in place and under prior management in the organizations that we were part of. So I'm hoping that those kinds of concerns will mostly be allayed, especially if we get, especially if people continue to participate and continue to contribute to Digital Foundry in the way that we'd like to see. So I hope that kind of concern will largely go away relative to kind of where we were at before.
Yeah. I don't think we need to worry about that, because there is a foundational business there that obviously I've spent a lot of money buying shares of, and if it wasn't really, if it wasn't a good business, I wouldn't be doing so.
Yeah.
So rest assured, when you've got massive companies making layoffs, that is obviously worrying. But at the same time, when you've got your own little individual business unit, there's very little that can actually impact us. It's more, what can I say? Just give you a classic example here. Our prior owners, prior partners rather, part owners, if you like, before Reed Exhibition, sorry, before IGN was Reed Exhibitions, ReedPop, pandemic comes along, and suddenly you're an events company that can't run events anymore. You know, the whole company kind of goes into survival mode, and a whole sort of range of blanket policies are deployed. You know, like pay freezes, for example. And, you know, obviously there were some layoffs at the time. You know, if you are an events company that, you know, that has gigantic overheads and cannot run events, I understand completely why this sort of stuff would happen, right? At the same time, if you're kind of like a part of that company, but at the same time, the pandemic doesn't really impact your business at all. In fact, you know, people at home meant more people were watching videos, right? You know, why are we even being included in that kind of conversation? You know, it just doesn't. There's a lot of things that, you know, business strategies for different businesses are obviously there for a reason, but, you know, we are a different business. We want to chart our own course. We aren't affected by all of this stuff. So we don't really want, you know, that kind of outside influence to have any kind of bearing on what we do. So, yeah, that's just kind of like one example from back in the day where, you know, this would never have happened under the original Gamer Network because it was tightly focused on you know, the creative element. You know, that's why it was successful.